I thought my niece's admiration for my successful husband was harmless until I went on a business trip and left them alone in our house. What I discovered upon my return shattered our family forever and made me question everything I thought I knew about love and trust. I never thought I'd be telling this story, but here I am. My name is Sarah, and what I'm about to share still feels like a nightmare I can't wake up from. It all started with my niece, Emma, my brother Jack's daughter. She's 23 now, but I've known her since she was just a little girl, back when her world was so much simpler. For more than a year, I had this gnawing feeling that Emma was looking way too much at my husband, David. He's 40, successful, everything her father isn't. At first, my mind couldn't accept it, and I told myself I was crazy. I mean, who wants to believe their niece has designs on their husband? But Emma's admiration for David was obvious. She was very vocal about it, always hanging on his every word. I didn't do anything because I never saw anything suspicious on David's side. He was always the perfect husband, the perfect father to our daughter Lily, who's 7. And he was always there for my brother Jack, despite Jack being, frankly, a loser and a stupid excuse of a father. Jack drinks, gambles, and is usually unemployed. David would collect him frequently from the hospital and pay for the medicine he needs for his liver. That's just the kind of man David is, or at least, the kind of man I thought he was. You see, my brother's story is a sad one. His wife, Claire, left when Emma was just 8 years old. She ran off with some guy she met at her workplace, a car dealership where she was a receptionist. Just packed her bags one day and abandoned Emma with Jack. I remember that day like it was yesterday. Jack showed up at our doorstep, drunk and crying, with little Emma clutching her stuffed rabbit, looking confused and scared. A lot of times when Emma was still a child, I took care of her. I'd cook for her, get her ready for school, help her with homework. I became the mother figure she desperately needed. We'd spend weekends together, baking cookies, watching movies, doing all the things her own mother should have been doing. I loved her like my own daughter, and in many ways, I still do, which makes this whole situation even more painful. David, my husband, is the complete opposite of Jack. He takes care of his appearance, always dressed impeccably in tailored suits. He built his company from the ground up, a successful consulting firm with 45 employees. I remember when he started, working from our spare bedroom, making calls all day, networking at every opportunity. Now he has this beautiful office in the city center, and his name is known in business circles all over the state. Emma has always looked up to David. When she was in high school, she'd ask him for advice about her future, about college applications, about everything really. She said she learned a lot from him about how a business works. David would let her shadow him sometimes during school breaks, showing her the ropes, teaching her about spreadsheets and profit margins. I thought it was sweet then, a uncle figure helping his niece find her path in life. Things started to change subtly about 2 years ago, when Emma graduated from college. She'd come around more often, always finding reasons to visit. She'd bring coffee for David from that expensive place he likes, remembering exactly how he takes it, 2 shots of espresso, a splash of almond milk, no sugar. She'd laugh at all his jokes, even the terrible ones that I'd heard 1,000 times before. The line was really crossed when one day she insisted on ironing his suit. David always wears suits and ties, it's part of his image, part of what makes him successful, he says. Emma wanted to prepare it for him, saying she noticed he seemed stressed and wanted to help out. I was very busy with Lily at the time, who was having a hard time getting used to her new school. It was a very stressful period for me. Lily would cry every morning, begging not to go to school. She wasn't making friends, and her teacher had concerns about her participation in class. And so Emma helped. I told her I would just order food every day, but she insisted on being useful, so she said. She cooked what he liked to eat, never asked what we wanted, just what he wanted. Beef Wellington, his favorite pasta with truffle oil, that specific brand of wine he enjoys. She'd hover around him at dinner, refilling his glass, hanging on his every word as he talked about his day at the office. I started noticing other things too. How she'd touch his arm when laughing at his jokes. How she'd find excuses to bend over when he was nearby. How she'd talk about her dating life, or lack thereof, saying how hard it was to find a real man like him. I felt sick to my stomach, but I kept telling myself I was imagining things. David would never. He couldn't possibly. 3 days ago, I had to go on a business trip. I'm a graphic designer, and I had a meeting with a potential client in another city. I was only going to be gone for 2 days. I left Lily with them in the house, trusting my husband and niece to take care of her. But David took her to my mother's house instead, saying Emma had offered to help him catch up on some work at the office. I actually got an anonymous text while I was away, which turned out to be from a friend of Emma's, a girl named Sophie who I'd met a few times. The text was simple: "Your husband is sleeping with Emma. I'm sorry. I hoped it was a stupid joke, some cruel prank. But when I got home, I confronted David. I told him I knew he slept with her, and he started apologizing. Explaining that it happened just once, that they had wine and it happened. My world collapsed in that moment. Everything I thought I knew, everything I believed in, just shattered. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. All I could see was Emma, the little girl I used to tuck into bed, in my bed with my husband." David tried to explain, his words tumbling out in a desperate rush. "They'd been working late at the office," he said. "Emma had brought wine, saying they deserved a break. One glass led to another, and then I couldn't bear to hear the details. I didn't want to know how my niece, the girl I'd helped raise, had seduced my husband in his corner office with the view of the city he was so proud of. I called Jack, not knowing what else to do. He showed up drunk, of course, spoiling for a fight. He tried to punch David but missed, nearly falling over. It would have been comical if it weren't so tragic. Emma was there too, tears streaming down her face, saying it was all a mistake, that she was sorry, that she'd never meant for any of this to happen. But the worst part was when Lily came home from my mother's house and saw us all there, me with puffy eyes from crying, Jack passed out on the couch, David with his shirt untucked and his hair a mess, and Emma looking like a deer caught in headlights. Our little girl looked around the room and asked, 'Did something bad happen?' Now, I don't know what to do. David's moved out temporarily, staying at a hotel. He calls constantly, leaving messages about couples counseling, about working things out, about how it was a mistake and he loves me. Emma's gone back to her apartment, and Jack probably doesn't even remember what happened. I've taken time off work, telling my clients I have a family emergency. I spend my days trying to keep things normal for Lily, helping her with homework, making her favorite meals, watching cartoons together on the couch. But at night, when she's asleep, I lie awake wondering how we got here. The memories keep flooding back. All those times Emma would show up unannounced at our house, always when David was due home from work. The way she'd dress when she knew he'd be around, always a little too polished for a casual family dinner. The questions she'd ask about our marriage: were we happy? Did we ever fight? Was it hard being married to someone so much older? I remember the day Emma graduated from college. David gave her a beautiful leather briefcase as a gift, the same brand he uses. She hugged him too long, her face pressed against his chest, and I looked away, telling myself it was nothing. Just an emotional day, just a niece grateful for her uncle's support. There was the Christmas when Emma gave David an expensive watch. I remember thinking it was odd, how could she afford something like that on her entry-level salary? David wore it proudly, saying how thoughtful she was, how she remembered him mentioning he liked that brand. I noticed she didn't have gifts for anyone else, not even for Lily. I think about the family barbecue last summer, when Emma showed up in a bikini, saying she wanted to use our pool. She spent the whole afternoon sunbathing, positioning herself so David could see her from his spot at the grill. I had caught him looking, just for a second, and the sight of it made me feel sick. But I pushed the feeling down, buried it under potato salad and forced smiles. A week before it happened, Emma had asked me about our marriage. We were in the kitchen, she was helping me prepare dinner, or rather, preparing David's favorite meal while I watched. She asked if it ever bothered me, the age difference between David and me. I'm 35, 5 years younger than him. She said she could never be with someone her own age, that she needed someone mature, established. Someone who knew what they wanted in life. I should have seen it then, should have recognized the hunger in her eyes when she talked about him. The day before my business trip, Emma had come over to help with Lily. She brought a new game for them to play together, but spent most of the time talking to David about his latest business deal. She knew all the details, all the players involved. Had he been telling her these things? When? Where? I was right there, but somehow not part of the conversation, like I was watching a scene play out between two people who had their own private language. Now, I sit in our house, my house, surrounded by memories that feel tainted. The family photos on the walls mock me. There's one of all of us at Lily's 6th birthday party. Emma's standing next to David, and even in the photo, I can see it now, the way she's angled toward him, the look in her eyes. Was I blind? Or did I just not want to see? My phone buzzes constantly. Messages from David, from Emma, from Jack when he's sober enough to remember what happened. My mother calls, offering advice I don't want to hear. Men make mistakes, she says, as if this was just a momentary lapse in judgment and not a complete betrayal of everything we built together. Lily asks when Daddy's coming home, and I don't know what to tell her. How do you explain to a 7-year-old that her father betrayed her mother with her cousin? That the cousin she looked up to, who played dolls with her and helped her with her reading, had seduced her father? You don't. You just say Daddy's on a business trip and try not to cry when she says she misses him. I've started seeing a therapist. Dr. Anderson listens patiently as I recount everything, occasionally making notes in her leather-bound notebook. She asks me what I want, and honestly, I don't know. Part of me wants to forgive David, to try to rebuild what we had. We've been together for 15 years, built a life together, a family. Can I throw that away over one mistake? But another part of me knows it wasn't just one mistake. It was 1,000 little betrayals leading up to that one big one. And Emma. What do I do about Emma? She was like a daughter to me. I changed her diapers, kissed her scraped knees, helped her pick out her prom dress. How do I reconcile that little girl with the woman who slept with my husband? Jack's no help. He alternates between drunk rage and drunk despair, showing up at my door at odd hours to either threaten David or cry about what a failure he is as a father. David's business partners have started calling. Apparently, he's missed some important meetings. His secretary called me, worried because he's not himself at work. I wanted to laugh, not himself. Of course he's not himself. The self I thought I knew wouldn't have done this. I've started packing away some of his things. His suits hang in the closet like empty versions of him, and I can't bear to look at them. I found one of Emma's hairbands in the bathroom, and the sight of it made me physically ill. I threw it in the trash, then took out the whole trash bag, as if the house itself was contaminated by these reminders. Yesterday, I ran into Sophie, Emma's friend who sent me the anonymous text. She was at the grocery store, and when she saw me, she burst into tears. She told me she'd known for weeks, had seen them together at a restaurant across town, looking too intimate to be just an uncle and niece. She confronted Emma, who had sworn it was nothing, just a business dinner. But Sophie knew better, and finally, her conscience had gotten the better of her. I thanked her, this stranger who had more loyalty to me than my own family. She hugged me in the middle of the produce section, both of us crying over the cucumbers. An elderly lady asked if we were okay, and I almost laughed. Okay. I'm so far from okay I can't even see it anymore. Last night, I found Lily looking at old family videos on her tablet. She was watching footage from last Thanksgiving, when we were all together. Emma was there, sitting next to David at the dinner table, and even in the shaky phone footage, I could see the way she looked at him. How did I miss it? In the video, I'm laughing at something, oblivious to the betrayal brewing right under my nose. I've started wondering about the future. Will there be more family gatherings? Will Emma always be this shadow in my life, this reminder of what was taken from me? If I stay with David, can I ever trust him again? And if I leave, what then? I'm 35, starting over with a 7-year-old daughter and a broken heart. Tomorrow, I have to meet with David to discuss practical matters. Lily's school schedule, bills that need to be paid, what to tell his parents who are supposed to visit next month. How do you have a conversation about mundane details when your whole world has been turned upside down? How do you sit across from someone you loved, someone you trusted, and try to plan a future when the past is in shambles? I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know if I'll ever be able to look at Emma without seeing the betrayal, if I'll ever be able to look at David without wondering if he's thinking of her. I don't know if our marriage can survive this, or if I even want it to. What I do know is that I have to be strong for Lily. She deserves better than this mess we've created. So I'll get up tomorrow, and the day after that, and I'll try to piece together some kind of life from the wreckage of what used to be. Because that's what mothers do. We carry on, even when carrying on feels impossible. I used to think I knew what love was, what family meant. Now, I'm not so sure anymore. All I know is that trust, once broken, is like a shattered mirror. You can try to piece it back together, but you'll always see the cracks, always be reminded of the moment it broke. And sometimes, the best thing you can do is sweep up the pieces and start over, even if it means leaving behind the reflection you once knew.